This is Shifting Our Schools episode 101, when project-based learning is just what you do.
Really view them as my kids, our kids. So we'll sit and talk, be like, okay, what does this kid need in this moment? And we'll sit and figure out how to best support that kid as a team. And that's one of my favorite things actually about our schedule, about our school, is that at the end of the day, everybody on that staff is about the kids. We're there to support those kids.
Listen up, educators. Are you looking to take your classroom to the next level? The technological shift in education is happening right now. If you're looking to integrate technology into your classroom, you're in the right place. Welcome to Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. Thank you for listening and subscribing to us in your favorite podcast player. If you aren't subscribed to us, you can do that now. Just search for Shifting Our Schools and then go ahead and click the subscribe button in your favorite podcast player and you'll be all good to go and not miss a single episode here at Shifting Our Schools. You can also find us on Spotify and on your Amazon Echo. Just ask your Echo to play the latest episode of Shifting Our Schools. And we really do appreciate all of you who continue to spread the word about Shifting Our Schools. We know that we get more listeners through word of mouth inside schools, in staff lounges than any other single avenue. So thank you for being part of our community. This month, our free giveaway is a copy of the book Classroom Management in a Digital Age by Patrick Green and Heather Dowd. For the entire month of November, we're going to be asking you to leave us your thoughts on different questions and ideas on our Shifting Our Schools Flipgrid. At the end of the month, we'll put all the names into a hat and we'll choose one person to get a free copy of the book Classroom Management in the Digital Age. And remember, the more responses you leave, the more times your name gets put into the hat. And not one single person has left a response yet. So your chances of winning are getting pretty good. You can leave us your Flipgrid responses by going to sospodcast.org and clicking on Flipgrid at the top, or using the Flipgrid code SOS Podcast. So if you download the app to your phone, you can just download the Flipgrid app and then type in the code SOS Podcast, all one word, into the app, and it'll bring you right to our Flipgrid account where you can leave your responses there. In fact, this week, our question is going to be asking you that maybe you want to do this on your phone. So this week, our guest talks all about project-based learning, as well as flexible seating and a host of tools she uses in her classroom. So this week, I have two different responses that you can do to enter to win the book. And if you want to, you can do both responses and get your name in twice. So here's the question. Question number one. What are your top three go-to tools to use with students in your classroom? You're going to hear a lot today in this episode, and I'd really like to hear from you. What are your top three go-to tools to use with students in your classroom? And either way you want to do this, if you use flexible seating in your classroom, can you take us on a tour of your classroom? Today's guest did just that for you, and you can see her video in the show notes below. I've put a link to a video that you can watch so that you can see how another teacher has set up flexible seating in her 6th grade ELA classroom. And what I'm going to ask you to do is, will you take us on a tour of your classrooms? There don't need to be students around. You can do this before or after school if you'd like, but you might want to, just on your phone, download the Flipgrid app, type in SOS Podcast, and then you can literally open up your phone and start recording and just take us on a tour. Walk us around your classroom. If you use flexible seating, I'd love to see how you set it up. And if you want to, make sure you check out the show notes below or head over to sospodcast.org where you'll find the video there as well on this episode. It's so great when teachers share and learn from each other. That's why I love making this podcast. This is how we all grow, by sharing our classrooms, our setups, our structures, the way we interact with students. I hope to see more classrooms on our Flipgrid soon for others to view and see how you set up your flexible seating space. So remember, you can either answer the question, what are your top three tools that you use with students, or take us on a tour of your classroom if you use flexible seating and show other teachers how you can set up your classroom in a flexible seating way. This week, Chris Butler and I have a chat with Kenzie Munn, who teaches sixth grade here in Washington State. What I love most about this episode is Kenzie's energy and passion. I work with a lot of teachers, and I can't tell you how sad it is when I talk to teachers who have only been teaching for a few years and have already feeling beaten down by the educational system. It is so refreshing to talk and learn from a young teacher who is passionate about her students, her classroom, and the art of teaching. You are going to enjoy this one, and there are so many nuggets to take away, you might want to listen twice. And with that, on with the show. Welcome back to another episode of Shifting Our Schools. Thank you for joining us this week. So excited to have Kenzie here from Richland School District, which, as we were talking before we started recording, is also the school district of my goddaughters, which is great. And Chris is here tonight. And Chris used to work in Richland School District, which is, I'm sure we'll hear more about Chris and Mackenzie's journey together as well. But Chris, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Yeah. So
good day at school.
Good day at school. So today was spent mostly in the office. We have a secondary day off of school for its kids, but it's a secondary PD day.
Okay.
So I was asked to go to a couple different schools throughout the day tomorrow to lead some sessions. So I'm doing one session that's focused mainly on Google Forms and kind of the magic that can happen with Google Forms. So we're going to talk about how to create quizzes, how to do some differentiation pieces with the ability to, based on how they answer a specific question, they can go to another section, that sort of thing. Add some support in there with videos, and then we're going to end with the thing that we talked about on our last recording, the 3 Ps. I think the teachers go through that. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. So I put all that together today. We're ready to rock and roll.
Awesome. Sounds good. Mackenzie, thank you for joining us this evening. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, I know, to have a chat with us. So we'll let you introduce yourself, kind of tell us your journey into education, why you decided to be a teacher.
Okay. So my name is Kenzie. My story is actually kind of long. I was a business major in college and marketing focus, and I was 2.5 years in. And I was nannying at the time for a principal. And she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, Kenz, we are short volunteers for this event. Can you come help out?" And I said, "Cool. Sure, of course." Boss asked you to do something, so you go. And I showed up at the school and I was volunteering at this math game that they had for the kids during recess. And they could come in and earn points and all these different stuff they had set up. And I remember watching this kiddo, and he was really struggling with this game. And you could see how frustrated he was. And I watched him for a few minutes, and I realized that after he answered the first couple questions, he'd get the hang of it and he'd get really fast. But by the time he got in the swing of things, the timer ran out. And so he'd get super frustrated because he'd only answer 4 questions and he needed 6 or whatever happened every single time.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Here, dude, hold it up the time, give it back to him." And within 5 minutes, you could see that light bulb moment, that aha moment, just click, and this kid was ridiculously happy. And I realized that moment was more satisfying and more rewarding for me than presenting in front of 125 investors. So I switched majors.
I love that. I love how we all have a different way of getting into education. You know, I think we all have moments like that we can look back on and be like, yep, that's the moment. Yeah. And we were talking before, this is your 4th year teaching?
This is, yeah.
All 4 years in 6th grade?
No, actually, I started in elementary, started 3rd grade, and then got displaced because I was the lowest on the totem pole. And so got 5th grade, loved 5th grade, but Libby had just opened up, the school that I'm at right now, and it was a STEAM school. And I was really obsessed with STEM. I wanted to do more with that. So I moved to middle school, so taught 6th grade English, and I'm loving it so far. It's been great. This is my 2nd year there.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Mackenzie, we got to work together last year. So in the Richland School District, the instructional coaches had a cohort of what we called lighthouse teachers. So teachers that an instructional coach worked closely with and got to be in their classes and get to know their kids and work with them throughout the school year. So, and you were one of my lighthouse teachers. So I got to come in with your kids, and they were awesome. Cool. It was so much fun to be there. It was really cool to see a newer teacher, third year in, right? But you had such a presence in class, and the way that you worked with your kids and the way that they responded to your just who you are and the way that you kind of did everything that you did in class. It was really cool to work with you in your class. So we'll talk about some of that a little bit tonight. I really want to talk about the fact that you're teaching in a STEAM school, the first STEAM school in the district, and kind of what that's all about. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. First of all, can you explain the difference between, say, working at a STEAM school and working at a regular middle school? Like, what do you see as being the difference?
I think the difference is that we're just all being intentional with our cross-curricular. We're all trying to bring in that cross-curricular project-based learning in everything we do. We also have a lot of really cool electives for kids. We have a computer science course that is actually equal to a high school credit. We have robotics and makerspace. Our librarian has really taken on the makerspace so the kids can go in and do 3D printing during lunch and things like that. And so besides the fact that we have all these awesome electives in our classrooms and in our core classes, we're really trying to be more cross-curricular. So for example, down the hallway today, Ancient Civilizations for History, 6th grade, was using VR to explore some of the pyramids from ancient Egypt. And then in my classroom, they're recording podcasts this project, and they're doing stop motion videos in the spring. And so we're just constantly trying to bring in that cross-curricular with everything that we do. Science has done a lot of really cool stuff where they're bringing in a lot of writing into the science. And so the kids actually have to make articles and things like that. And they have to make visual models and digital models, and just everything we do, we try to be really cross-curricular and bring that intentionality back into what we do.
So talk a little bit then about how you set up these project-based learning experiences for students. Is there are you and the other teachers do you really have to, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess co-create units together, or are you still very siloed in your meeting your own standards, or how's that work?
We do a lot together. We use this Summit Learning Program platform, which is third year at Libby, so we're still working out a lot of the kinks. But the cool part about that is that there's a lot of cross-curricular rubrics that go into it. And so I'm using the rubric inferencing, and science using the exact same rubric, and history using the exact same rubric, so we can be cross-curricular with everything we do just because our rubrics are the same. Yeah. But at the same time, we'll sit down as a department and say, okay, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? How can we mix our kids? How can we support each other? So we do a lot of that co-planning together. Our team's pretty good about that. So always can improve, always can get better, but pretty good.
Kenzie, can you talk a little bit more about the Summit platform, just for people that aren't familiar with that, what that's all about? And
so the Summit platform is a lot, but it's all about teaching habits of success to these kids and teaching them study skills and bringing in more of that self-paced model into instruction. So they took the Common Core standards and made these cognitive skill rubrics in alliance with the Stanford University, who helped them out with that. And the great thing about that is it brings all of the NGSS standards, the C3 social studies standards, and the Common Core standards all together into the same rubric. So we have these cross-curricular rubrics. We're able to really hit multiple subjects with the same thing. We bring in the self-paced model because kids can work ahead in different aspects of the platform. Then they work together on collaborative projects in our classroom. And there's also this amazing mentoring piece of it, where each kid has a mentor that they meet with every other week. They set academic goals and personal goals. And we're all about, how can we make you into a successful human? How can we teach you the skills that you need to be successful with any grade that you go into or any career that you go into?
Yeah, I love that. I've been a lot about what I've been talking about with teachers is this idea of, if the skills we are teaching kids are not transferable to something outside of our classroom or our school, then why the heck are we teaching them? You know, so that idea to have a mentor that is constantly helping students to A, focus, but B, see, I mean, kids need adults to say, here is how this skill is going to help you. Here's jobs that this skill is going to be used for. I love that. Do you guys, other than cross-curricular, are you also across grade levels, or 6th grade, 7th grade, 7th grade, or are kids allowed to mix across grade levels as well?
It's pretty isolated except for math. Math, they get to work ahead a lot. Okay. And so we have kiddos in our 6th grade math class that are at all different levels So their core instruction is all 6th grade standards, but then that self-paced piece of the platform, they're placed at their level based on test scores, based on teacher evidence. So we got kiddos that are all in the same classroom. Some of them are taking pre-algebra courses, and some of them are taking 6 math courses, all working together. So
oh, that's cool.
we do a lot of cross grade level collaboration though. Like my 8th graders are coming down this week or next week, excuse me, to do presentations to my 6th graders, and they're going to do lit circle discussions and things like that. So the teachers are making those connections happen. It's not necessarily curriculum or platform. It's just teachers doing that.
And what does your school day look like? Like, is it still the standard 50-minute?
No, our schedule is very strange. It's very confusing. So Mondays and Fridays, we see all of our kids. So it's 1 through 6.
Okay.
Fridays, we also have early release. So Monday, we have 55-minute classes. Fridays, I think they're 45-minute classes because we get an hour early release. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, we only have 4 classes. They're 80-minute blocks. And then we also have an advisory period built in. So
how long is
example,
advisory?
30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have first hour, second hour on Tuesday. And then we have A lunch and A advisory, or B lunch and B advisory. They flip flop.
Okay.
And then third hour, fourth hour. And then Wednesday morning, we start at 6, advisory lunch again. And then we start over again with 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6 on Thursdays. So the blocks are 80 minutes during the middle of the week. And we call those project days. So that's the day when we're doing more extended time, cross-curricular stuff, projects. The kids are doing lit circles in my classroom a lot, Socratic seminars, things like that. And I get a lot of differentiation during that time because I can pull groups to do rotations and things like that. Mondays and Fridays are more of our self-directed learning time. So the kids are setting goals on what they want to work on, and I'm meeting with different kids and making sure they're getting everything they need to be successful.
Very cool. I love schools that are looking at different ways of doing that.
It was really cool. And one thing, having been in that school, so I was an instructional coach in that school for a semester, and then worked with Kenzie the year after that. One thing that's really cool about that schedule is on those Mondays and Fridays, and it happens every other day, but those Mondays and Fridays, if a mentor needs to pull a kid in to give them some extra support, the teachers work together and they can do that. And it's
cool.
just part of what's built into the school. It's a really cool support system for all the kids.
Very cool.
Yeah. I will say our teams work so well together on that. We don't really view them as my kids, it's our kids. So we'll sit and talk, be like, okay, what does this kid need in this moment? And we'll sit and figure out how to best support that kid as a team. And that's one of my favorite things actually about our schedule, about our school, is that at the end of the day, everybody on that staff is about the kids. We're there to support those kids. And so that advisory block is great because we do our curriculum strong curriculum, or character strong, curriculum days. And then we're also bringing in STEM projects. So they're doing, like, right now they're designing a treehouse. It's an engineering design challenge that they have. So every day during advisory, it's something different, but we're constantly just building those relationships with our advisory class.
Talk a little bit about how, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to have her talk a little bit about, having worked a little bit with the Summit program with you guys, the fact that I really like how it kind of lends to personalization and differentiation, but also to that project-based stuff. What are some projects that you guys are doing? What are some cool things that you guys are doing in class, either that you have done or that you're looking forward to, as far as PBL and that?
Yeah, we're actually starting a new project on Tuesday when we come back from our long weekend. The kids have to answer the project question, what does it mean to have a good life? And so we're analyzing collection of nonfiction articles and doing some literary analysis with that. But then they are writing a podcast that they are then going to actually post. We're going to put them on QR codes and hang them in the hallway. So they're actually recording a podcast about what does it mean to have a good life. They have to have their claim and have their evidence and all those different things. It was great. Last year, Chris came in and showed them his podcast and showed them how to do a vague podcast script and how to really engage your audience and things like that. What I love about it is that the kids are going to do one recording submit their recording. I'll give them feedback on that recording, and then they go record it again. So it's not a one time and done. They have to really improve their craft. I'm really excited for that. That'll be fun. And then in the spring, we're going to do another project where they get to design stop motion videos. So they have to write a short skit. We're going to read the book Holes, watch the movie Holes, compare and contrast the two, and then they have to write a short skit and actually animate it with stop motion video. So we're bringing in that narrative skill of writing and dialogue and all that great stuff, but then bringing in the technology piece where they get to make their own movie of it.
Very cool. I love that book. I read that book out loud to my 4th and 5th grade kids. I loved that book. I still use it all the time. Like the first one's always the hardest, right? First hole's always the hardest. Talk a little bit about the structure of your project-based learning, and what is the structure that you have in place? Like, how long do you spend in, say, do you use a design cycle? Do you use is there a cycle that you use that you take kids through? Can you kind of talk about the design of the problem-based approach that you guys use?
Every project's a little bit different.
Okay.
I would say with this project that's coming up, it's fresh on my mind because we just had a planning meeting.
Yeah,
so
it's perfect.
The project that's coming up, we're going to pose that question to kids. We're going to have an entire exploration of what does it mean to have a podcast? What does it mean to answer these questions, journalist type thing. We're going to analyze those articles together. The cool part about how I do it is we have what's called checkpoints. And that's part of Summit-based learning, or the Summit learning program, but part of it's just how I taught before I even had Summit, where we break down the project into pieces of it, and they have to get feedback on each piece of that project. So throughout this entire project they're getting feedback on every single step. They're able to improve their craft, able to improve those skills, and then it ends up being this one culminating project at the end. Sometimes that's great for students because if they're working with their checkpoints, they're able to get feedback at every moment. Sometimes it's stressful for, our 6th graders who don't realize they're important until they class. Doesn't happen very often, but it's actually great for kids to be able to get feedback on individual skills as they go throughout, and then they have this great project.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. So here's what I heard, and let me know if this because this is the thing I love is there are so many different ways that you can structure. And if you've listened to the podcast, I'm really big on structures. You've got to have structures when it comes to learning. Right. And so here's what I heard you just say, even though it went pretty fast. So the first kind of structure that's fine. The first kind of structure you put in place was an explore time. Like you give them a question and we have time to explore. What does that question mean? What does that look like? And along the way, there's constant checkpoints, which we call assessment, but we'll call them checkpoints, but in the world, we call them assessment. And then there's a stage. So there's a stage of explore, a stage of analyzing. So analyzing, what did you find? What is out there? Then there's a prototyping stage. And the prototype is the first time they record their podcast because it's a prototype. This isn't your final product. And then you're going to get feedback on that. That allows you then to go back again and create your final product. So then it's the creation stage. That's where you'd actually create your product. And then there's the publish stage where you're putting the QR codes. So your project that you have coming up really has 5 distinct stages. And the thing I love about project-based learning like that is if we can break those stages down for students and actually name those stages. And I don't know if you guys do this, but if you can name those stages for kids, then it gives them something to solidify. And they're the exact same stages we do projects in real life. When you need to update your house, or you need to fix your car, or you want to go buy a new car, you go through an explore stage, an analyze stage, you go prototype. It's called test driving, right? Like you go through all of these stages that we do in real life are the same things we do in the classroom. And that's what makes it successful is having that structure in place with those constant checkpoints, right? There are constant checkpoints along the way. I love that.
And what I really love, Jeff, is the point that you keep driving home. There's the constant checkpoints. And I've heard you talk about this a lot in sessions I've been in with you and working with you. And it's something that I've worked with teachers a lot is the idea that the constant checkpoints, if you're checking in with your kids, if you're giving them feedback, if you're giving them support and like, hey, let's tweak this a little bit. This was awesome. Let's do this. Then there's no way they're going to quote unquote fail that project at the end, right? They're iterating, they're doing all the work, they're prototyping, they're doing everything, and you're giving them constant feedback. So there's no way that they're going to quote get it wrong, if you will.
Correct. So if you are doing project-based learning correctly, and a child fails at the end, that is on the teacher, not the child, because those checkpoints obviously were not set up to allow that student to go back and fix the prototype, go back and do more analyzation. We were talking just a couple podcasts ago with Adam Pollock, where they make their kids spend weeks in the empathy stage. The way they set theirs up is the first thing you have to understand your audience. And he goes, we force them to sit in that stage of empathy and really get to know who are you making this product for before you ever get started. And going through that constant checkpoint, that's what's different this time about project-based learning. It's one of the things I get with teachers is, this was me as a teacher. When I started teaching in 1999, we did project-based learning before all the testing stuff came in. I'm lucky enough to remember a time before all the testing came in, right? But what is different is when we did project-based learning back in the day, we would give kids a project, a big essential question. We'd wait 6 weeks and then we'd have to grade it. And we miss this checkpoint part that has become so critical. So as the pendulum is swinging back out of testing, which it is, into more of this project-based approach again, that's the update. That's the thing that makes this thing work, because all of those checkpoints are different assessment pieces. Kenzie, can you kind of talk about what are some of those checkpoints that you use? Like a script before they ever record would be a checkpoint, right? Like that's something you can assess. What are some other ones along the way that you would say are these like checkpoints that kids have to have?
Oh gosh. So this current project that we're going into, they have to analyze the word choice of the author in the non-technical they chose. And so that's one of the checkpoints is we break down every skill that I'm assessing them on their final product. I break that down and make it an individual checkpoint. So to every piece of the way, I'm able to see exactly what skills they need support on or what skills they're able to whiz through and keep going. So I usually do that. I sit down, I look at the final product, I say, what do I actually want to grade on this? And then I backwards plan every single checkpoint. Every time I want to check in with a kid and see what skills they're able to do well, what they need support on, where they need mastery, things like that.
So can you talk about some of the others? So talking about word choice, script writing, what are some of those other ones?
Word choice, doing script writing, they have to have a checkpoint on their argumentative claim, so what they think it to have a good life. They're having a checkpoint on development, so they have to show how the articles that they chose are supporting the argumentative claim that they came up with. So I think there's 4 or 5 checkpoints throughout this entire project, which the project entire quarter. So they're having 4 or 5 different checkpoints from me before we get to the final products.
Yeah. And see, that was always the pushback on project-based learning before, was that 6 weeks into the school year, you still didn't have a grade in the grade book. And now you have these checkpoints that can become something you can put in a grade for parents to see that something's happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and let's be honest too, Kenzie, those are just the quote unquote, the formalized checkpoints. You're checking with your kids all the time. I know you, I've seen you work. And that's what teachers do, right? They're out there and they're checking in all the time.
Yeah, those are the more formative assessments I have. I use Pear Deck in my classroom every single day. And so I'm constantly in live feed seeing how every single kid is doing on the prompt, on their response questions, on everything that we do. And that's really awesome for me because I know in a minute exactly where every kid is at and if they need support. And I often pull my groups based on that data. So as we're doing our lecture on theme or whatever the lecture needs to be on, and they're doing their quick checks on Pear Deck, I can pull kids that need that extra support in live time, which is so much more beneficial than them turning in something written. It takes me 3 or 4 days to get it back to them. And then by that time, hopefully I can get this to them or we've moved to the next skill,
I love it.
That live feedback is probably the biggest game changer I ever had in my classroom, was using Pear Deck in my classroom every day.
Yeah, because it allows you to do that, right? You get this instant feedback in a prototyping situation, and that again is modeling real world. That's a transferable skill. What are some other tech that you use that you think makes this successful for you in your classroom? So you mentioned Pear Deck. Are there any other kind of tools that you use or that you think these are things that for me, just that I almost at this point need to have in order to make this work for me?
Pear Deck is the top one. I don't know how to teach without Pear Deck anymore. That would be really hard for me.
Awesome.
I also love Flipgrid, and I also really love Puzzle. Those ones are probably my top 3 right now. We use quizzes a lot. Just my kids absolutely love them. They love quizzes. So we do quizzes maybe a couple times a month. Maybe we do quizzes, and it's the most exciting thing that could ever happen in this.
Your kids like quizzes. What is wrong with you that your kids like quizzes?
I know. So it's this app. Have you seen it before? Quizzes?
No.
So it's kind of like Quizlet but better. And so it's kind of like a mesh of Quizlet and Kahoot in the same. So it's just quick answer. They have multiple choice answers and they compete on the board and things like that. I really love the teacher reports that come out of it. And so I can get the teacher report at the end and see how kids are doing. I can send home a practice link. So I'll do that a lot with like key terms and things like that when they just need to get the key terms, or those grammar lessons that everybody hates on a worksheet. I make it into something more fun. So kids absolutely, they beg to do quizzes. It's kind of ridiculous.
I love it.
And then Kenz, you mentioned Edpuzzle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jeff, do you know it?
Yeah, I love Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle's fantastic. Yeah, that's another great one. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the flexible seating in your classroom. Why do you use flexible seating? What do you see as benefits to flexible seating? And how does that add into your project-based approach?
So I came from elementary. And in elementary, you pull your kids to the carpet and you have your lessons on the whiteboard, and then you send them back to their stations and things like that. That's just how elementary works. So when I came into 6th grade, I looked at the classrooms that just had kids sitting in rows, and I said, oh my gosh, how boring. Like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to make my kids sit in rows. So I really thought about the flow of my room. I have a smartboard in my room, so I stand in the front of the room and run everything from my smartboard, or I run Pear Deck from my phone a lot. And so I realized that I don't need kids in the front of the room sitting at a desk. So I got those little IKEA tables, those little IKEA bedside stands that are like $4 or whatever. I have a couple of those on the floor. I have giant floor pillows on the floor. And in the middle of my room, I do have traditional desks or tables. They're partner tables. They're not desks. And in the back of the room, I have a standing table that my aunt actually built for me. She came in and had a kid stand next to it and measured how tall it needed to be and how wide for the crowd to fit. And she built me this awesome standing table in the back of my classroom. So I think about the flow in my room. I have my bookshelves in the back of the classroom, standing table. The middle of the classroom is the more traditional seating with the tables, with the chairs. And then the bottom of the classroom, in front of the whiteboard, is all that flexible seating on the floor with the floor pillows and the tables and things like that. And then I have a bucket of clipboards everywhere. I have stools, remember the cheapo ones from IKEA again, that kids can pick up and take wherever they want. So I do that a lot. I have rotations where kids are moving around the room constantly. I have kids choose what they want to work on. So I make parts of the room a topic and the kids move to where they want to work. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think my kids like it because after they come from
I'm sure. Yeah.
So when my kids come from science, they have those stools in science and they have to sit with their back straight the whole time. So I'm like, can we sit on the floor? Go sit on the floor. And I don't care how you sit. It's fine. Yeah. You can sit on the floor.
I love that. I might ask you, if you don't mind, when you get to school tomorrow, maybe if you could take a picture or a short video of just kind of what your classroom setup looks like. Because this is something I'm getting more and more, especially at the middle school and high school level, is teachers asking for, well, how can you fit 30 teenage bodies in a classroom and still do flexible seating? So if you don't mind just taking a couple photos, or if you want to do a quick video on your phone, walking around your classroom, kind of talking about it either way, I think teachers would love just to see kind of how you have that set up. So I think that'd be very cool.
Yeah, no problem.
That's awesome.
And it's really cool having worked in your class. It just feels different. The kids love it. They're very comfortable with it. They get to choose what's best for them that day. Sometimes they're going to be standing. Sometimes they're going to be sitting on the floor. Sometimes at a desk. It's a great way to make them feel comfortable in their learning environment. And
as an adult, Chris, you're walking in her room saying, this room just feels different. Yeah. It's going to be the same for a kid, who's coming from science, who has to sit up with their back straight the whole time. And all of a sudden you get to go into this room where you feel different, right? That there's something's different about this room. And that's the magic right there. You've got them hooked there. I mean, hooked so much they want to take quizzes. I mean, that's how it works. Right? How great is that? So I love it. All right. Well, any other questions, Chris, that you wanted to ask Kenzie while we have her?
No, I think we got it covered.
Yeah.
Everything
cool.
we had anyway.
Yeah. So I have one more question. You're in a one-to-one school environment.
Yes.
And how do you view technology and its use in your classroom? Is it just do you think about it, or is it just for you, it's just kind of there and you use it, and it so many schools are worried about going one-to-one and having kids on computers all the time and wanting to know, I've got to know all these different programs that I have to use. What's it like for you being in a one-to-one classroom?
I'm really passionate about blended learning. I still think that kids need real books in their hands. I still think that kids need to take notes on paper. I still think that brainstorming on paper is one of the best writing tools you can have. I still think that technology is important. What drives me nuts, and Chris and I have talked about this multiple times, is when I walk into a classroom and someone says, look at this shiny new website I found. Isn't it so cool and pretty? And I say, did it do anything for your kids? Did you get anything purposeful out of this shiny new website that you're showing me?
But it's free. It's free.
Right. What's the question? Yeah, Kenzie, what's the question I always ask? What do you want the kids to learn and be able to do?
Exactly. Right. So I'm really about every piece of technology I put into my classroom and I show to my kids has a distinct purpose. If it doesn't have a purpose and it's not valuable, then what's the point of wasting instruction time, which is already limited on showing them a website? What's the point? So I also get really annoyed when people say, look, I put all of the worksheets for this entire chapter onto the classroom. Okay, you didn't do anyone justice there. You didn't do anyone favors there. You just replaced the already rudimentary tool that you had and put it on technology to make it look better. It drives me absolutely bonkers. So
and then complain that kids spend all day looking at a screen.
Exactly.
That's my favorite. You know, kids today, they just look at a screen all day. Well, that's because you took every one of your worksheets and put it on a computer screen. If you'd have left them as worksheets. That's so cool. Well, Kenzie, thank you for spending time with us. It's fantastic. I so want to come visit your classroom. I just know that I'm going to walk in and it's just going to feel different. And I just love classrooms that you just know when you walk in that there's something special going on. If people wanted to reach out to you to maybe have more conversations, what's a good way for them to reach out to you? Are you on Twitter, any social networks that you use, or what's a good way for other teachers to reach out to you?
Yeah, I am. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is just Miss Munn, MISS.MUNN. And then my Twitter handle is just Kenzie Munn, MCKENZIEMUNN.
Awesome.
Okay.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Kenzie, it was awesome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Now my mouse isn't working, so I can stop recording. Get over here, mouse. It is like it's jumping around. Come on, mouse. Hannah, I got it right here. Hannah, right.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Shifting Our Schools with your host, Jeff Udick. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit sospodcast.org, facebook.com/Jeff Udick, and on Twitter @JUdick. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Shifting Our Schools.